It is said that practice makes perfect. Others say perfect practice makes perfect. These sayings, although somewhat contradictory, make perfect sense. An interesting question we should be asking ourselves is, what exactly is perfect practice? And what does perfect practice actually ask of us? Stay tuned to the end of this video for some answers, and for now, let me paint you a picture. I think, in short, perfect practice asks us to mimic the conditions of the application as closely and as safely as possible. This happens in all things, but perhaps it is perfectly highlighted by observing how MMA fighters prepare for a fight. Their perfect practice is dependent upon a training method that best suits the kind of fighter they are facing. If a striker is set to fight another striker, perfect practice might mean a dedicated focus on striking. But if that same striker is set to fight a grappler, then perfect practice necessitates addressing this change, which likely means more focus on grappling, such as takedown and submission defenses. In other words, the definition of perfect practice shifts to meet the demands of the application itself. In a vacuum, perfect practice doesn't ever need to change. If a Taekwondo practitioner will only ever fight another Taekwondo practitioner, there's little sense in learning defenses against things that a Taekwondo practitioner will never try to do. So in these instances, perfect practice can be set in stone. It can travel across generations. It can become part of tradition, lineage, and even culture. The Filipino martial arts is comprised of countless styles, and each style may have carried preferences or focus over generations. Some will focus on a particular weapon, a particular set of tactics, or a particular range of fighting. When practitioners of an FMA system only practice within themselves, and if they only fight among themselves, it is entirely possible for perfect practice to be cemented as absolute truths. And they often feel this way when these practices become part of tradition. There's nothing wrong with sticking with tradition. However, this isn't the focus of this video. This video is concerned with the growing number of FMA practitioners choosing to build bridges with one another, training in multiple styles, fighting and sparring in multiple formats of competition. But first, let me say that it is totally possible to remain loyal to one style, adhere to its traditions, and still be willing to explore, innovate, discover, and play with other systems. We see this all the time. As a practitioner of Pikiti Tertia myself, I find great value in exploring other systems, such as Modern Arnis, Balintawak, Estacada de Campo, FCS Kali, Illustrissimo, and others. However, philosophically, I still see myself as having a base of Pikiti Tertia. But back to perfect practice, and specifically perfect practice when it comes to fighting and sparring in open formats and open style competitions. Some formats may allow punches, kicks, takedowns, and submissions. Now, if all I've ever done are consensual flow drills that train defenses against known strikes within my style, I'm going to be at a severe disadvantage. Conversely, if all I've ever trained are stick matches where aggression and violent actions are the priority, I might find myself disadvantaged in point sparring formats where the primary focus is clean, unanswered strikes that may require a sophisticated pre-clash tactical strategies. My perfect practice has to shift to address the conditions of the application. And this might be a very difficult thing to do. It might be difficult to begin even thinking about wanting to do it, especially if we've invested many years into learning in one particular way. Even more difficult as we grow older and become, less welcoming of change. But the most difficult barrier to overcome when our perfect practice is faced with the challenge of having to shift to a different application, it's our own ego. Shifting the nature of perfect practice will mean that our limitations and shortcomings will be exposed. And this is especially difficult when we've attained some prestige, notoriety, or rank within our system. It is compounded when we build up our image to be that of a subject matter expert, and even more so when we engage in public online discourse, proposing our superiority over another system, style, method, or even technique. You see, we build social walls around ourselves designed to make us look strong, but in reality, they become walls that cage us within a particular range of improvement, limiting our growth within the confines of authenticity or tradition. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to specialize, because explorers, like many of us, will need the expertise of these specialists to be the explorers that we want to be. And any explorer might tell you that the journey is never as perfectly traveled as it is plotted on a map. That perfection may actually mean having the skills and capabilities to adapt to imperfect conditions. That it might be better to move forward and move than it is to sit around and wait until perfect conditions present themselves. Winston Churchill once said that perfection is the enemy of progress. And so what we ought to be seeking in FMA isn't perfection, but progress. Sometimes we can get so wrapped up in throwing the perfect angle one strike or the perfect witik or the perfect redondo. But the application requires adaptation to imperfection. And so we might find ourselves having to throw an off-balanced angle one or an overextended witik, or we might need to execute a defensive block as we lose our footing. We might need to choose the lesser of two evils, which may mean sacrificing a cut to ourselves in order to cut them deeper. We might need to throw a strike that is unrooted, unbalanced, and inefficient in order to just stay in the fight. In an MMA fight, the striker I mentioned earlier probably doesn't want to be taken down, but they're going to train for their imperfect scenario as part of their perfect practice. And so in my opinion, as a Filipino martial artist, I have to do the same. I have to account for imperfect conditions in my perfect practice. This doesn't mean I have to take wrestling lessons or be a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. After all, for the most part, this is a hobby with some extensions into practical self-defense. And so a once-in-a-while exposure is likely going to be good enough for now, right? Like maybe. But at least we're making progress, and we're not allowing perfection to be the enemy of progress. Now remember those walls I talked about earlier? You might be wanting to explore and learn with people outside of your walls, but don't know exactly how to approach it. Maybe you're waiting for an invitation or the perfect condition to begin. Don't wait. We're living in extraordinary times, and so many online courses are available. So many Zoom lessons, so many forums and groups. Begin with that. Start somewhere. Try something new. Invite Filipino martial artists from different systems into your clubs. Begin your imperfect journey for the sake of progress. It is never too late. And if a perfect time is even possible, it might be right now. So look guys, I never want to propose that one way is better than the other, or that your FMA system is ill-equipped to meet the demands of modern times because it chooses to be exclusively traditional. This makes an assumption that I know what your priorities are and what your training goals are, and maybe I don't. So what I do know is that there is tremendous benefit to exposing our preferences against the preferences of others in a way that builds bridges and doesn't burn them. So if you're going to invite other FMA systems to play with yours, please do it with a good heart and good intentions. Approach it from a mutually beneficial lens rather than an opportunity to prove your superiority. Be welcoming, be accommodating, and expect others to do the same for you or your students. So my final word for today, embrace imperfection and let it lead you towards never-ending progress. Now before you go, in Filipino culture we have a thing called pasalubong. It is the tradition of travelers bringing gifts from their destination. And since you've traveled here on my channel, consider leaving a little bit of yourself as a gift. Please hit that subscribe button and click on that little notification bell right beside it so that you'll know whenever I put up a new video. My name is Paulo Rubio, aka GN. This is FMA Source. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.